Hello, I'm the guy with a hat who can predict COVID-19. I'm going to tell you now why Germany is still not having community spread but locking down now, or doing the social distancing measures, which I abbreviate as locking down, makes sense. So, first, why is the spread still under control, or at least was under control until quite recently? So, basically, I forecasted in my last video that Germany would more or less be on the same path as North Korea, albeit, but like a couple of days, actually a week, more than a week behind. Actually, Germany will end up at a higher total number of infected people. The reason for that I will come to later. But the infection will spread equally slowly like it did in South Korea, because there's no community spread currently. I can tell this. I mean, the first estimate that I will confirm the numbers later with other. Basically, I make predictions from that and see if they check out for other things. And I will use this slide actually to tell you how to cross-check if the predictions here make sense. Couple of ways. So first, if I did actually collect the data here and try to do this video. I'm slow. On the 16th, at which time there were 15 dead people reported in Germany, 15 deaths, and which means if you follow my last video, we go back 8 days, we multiply by 100, which is the number of people, that are infected per dead person, so 1 over the lethality, and then we look 1 day later and see how many people the Germans have found, assuming that testing them took 1 day. They should have confirmed 1,500 cases. They found 1,100, and it took them 1 more day to find them. So there are a few spreaders out there and a few infections happening, but basically the Germans test and quarantine enough people to keep long chain reactions from happening, and this is what the real problem would be. So this also means I predict that there are little to none clusters forming in Germany. If you look at Italy, you can see that we only have maps of reported cases, but basically you should see just by random chance that there are clusters localized. And if you look at the map where the German, both the deaths and the infections are reported, this is pretty much the same as the population distribution. So how much population is in a German land is basically the highest correlation with how many cases are reported, which tells you there are no random clusters. If a single cluster with 1,000 people in Saarland would make it the second largest land, and also have the second most deaths, while here you can see that the deaths occur where the most people are confirmed, and not only confirmed now but later. And even better, what is actually more important than an accurate lethality rate is guessing this time difference, this time it takes for a person to die correctly. And in this case it happened that 10 days ago Baden-Württemberg had more confirmed cases than Bavaria. So Baden-Württemberg, you can read, actually it's the lower left circle, which is almost the same size as the lower right circle now. So 10 days ago this was actually opposite, so the lower left circle was bigger than the lower right circle. There were more cases in Baden-Württemberg, and 8 days after that there were more deaths in Baden-Württemberg than in neighboring Bavaria. This thing reversed 2 days later, and both in the confirmed cases and the death cases, so the timing works out. This is another way to both consistency check, and if you think you have a good case, then you can make predictions. So then you can actually refine the numbers. This is what I want to be doing, but I don't have the time for it. So, problems. Well, how can I confirm? Why are the confirmed cases still growing exponentially in Germany? I mean, also it's a big problem. This is obviously meaning that still more people get infected and will die. The growth of deaths in Europe is even faster than expected. I mean, what does this mean? And I had indication already on the 16th that Germany was running out of test capacity. So how can we understand this? Basically, the number of confirmed Germans grows exponentially if the number of people getting infected abroad or in Europe grows exponentially, and some of them will be Germans staying there for vacation and then traveling home. This is the main effect that we're seeing. It actually has one somewhat worrying consequence, but that we might be underestimating or overestimating the lethality and thereby underestimating the number of spreaders. But there's one thing in Germany why it still works out. Come to that in a later video. So, as I said, the number of confirmed cases is not a good number to measure anything by. Basically, it tells us how many tests are available, which is currently the bottleneck of confirming cases. It's not how many people actually have the disease. The number of deaths is going to be accurate. Someone who is close to dying, they will test. Okay? So the number of deaths rose by a factor 6 in 4 weeks. Basically, most people modeling and also the basic number, if you take them at basic face values from the case studies, get you to a factor that should be 4, so 20% instead of 25. But you have 25% a day, which makes a huge difference. A difference in factor 6 to 4 in 1 week means a difference of factor 36 to 16 in 2 weeks. It basically cuts the time that between basically nobody being infected and everybody being infected in half, at least. So this is really, really concerning. So we can understand this. I mean, one reason why this might happen is that the basic reproduction number jumped. There are actually some others. The serial interval might actually be calculated in a way that it's not what we need. We would need the serial rate, not the interval. This is another problem. So basically but if the serial interval is correct, or the number we need, then it would mean that instead of 3 people being infected by one person, it's 5. This is why quarantine really makes sense, because this thing is really, really spready. So, the limits to the German test capacity, I actually only found the number online, actually not on the German, but on the Korean Wikipedia page. So on the Wikipedia page for South Korea, and couldn't properly verify them, but they reported 16,000 tests, and they cited sources where the number was not in there from early March. Ideally, the test capacity should also increase exponentially. That might be the problem, that it's increasing at a slower rate. So, the other observation is that both Sweden and Norway are running into a bottleneck with testing. That's another thing. And actually, they ran into that bottleneck 1 week ago. So, this quarantine comes probably at the right time, and currently has the duration is also right, because it just covers the rest of the flu season. Do understand that COVID is not going to die off as the flu. You can see here the flu season in the 5-year average. Basically, no one has the flu anymore in May. This is not going to happen with COVID, but hopefully it means that, but going to mean 2 things. Hopefully it means that COVID will spread a bit more slowly, even if we don't do anything about it. And the second thing is there's less people having flu symptoms, so anyone who's coughing is basically having COVID. This makes finding COVID easy, even if you don't have tests. So basically, if we run out of tests, locking down until flu season is over is the perfect thing to do. The other thing is that most of Europe, I mean, basically Southern and Western Europe should go on lockdown, and actually Poland as well at least. And anyone who runs out of test capacity should do, as Germany. Makes sense if they all do it together, because otherwise you have the fact that, well, now the Italians locking down now, basically killing the disease. I think the lockdown will work. But then all the Germans have lost control, and by the time the Italians go out of lockdown, the Germans infect the Italians. On this measure, it's also important to ban Europeans from traveling abroad, because they will infect, again, like Russians or Africans, and then they will infect the Europeans back in a month or two. And then all that locking down was more or less in vain, or did by much less time than it could have. Internal travel restrictions, I don't know. If everybody did effective lockdown measures, it's actually rather unhelpful. The one thing it will help, preventing people from traveling internally, is to make contact tracing easier. What I want you to do is to critically review this model. I just gave you advice how you can cross-check all those things that I'm saying. I'm not only using the numbers. The numbers are basically telling me what's probably up, and then I reference them to basically make predictions how other numbers should look like and check them. If that works out, then I give prediction. I want you to critically review this model, and ideally, if you have questions about it, ask them in the comments so I don't have to answer the same question several times. Help me get the attention of the Robert Koch Institute, and basically I want to compare notes. They have way better statistical data. They have other good ways of, I think, assessing the situation. If you pool the good ways, you get even better predictions. Get the number of hospitalized cases. This is really important, even if one country quarantines way more people than others in hospitals, as long as they do this at the same day. This won't matter much. It's the same as a factor of 2 in the lethality. It doesn't offset my predictions by much. And last but then we can make these predictions way more precise, way more than I'm currently doing, and cross-check them better. And we need maps to tell basically people, here are spreaders, here aren't. We're running out of test kits, so if we keep testing where we've just found and quarantined all the people, we're not finding the actual people out there, because in this region there aren't. In another region there might be 10,000, and you're not testing because you haven't found them yet. This is a problem. With this, I'd like to spread the word that we need to find the spreaders, and I tell you where to find them, and this way we stop the spread.